Welcome. I'm delighted to have the opportunity to speak to this topic, the wisdom of dependence. I chose the topic not because of its popular appeal, but because I couldn't actually think of a more important topic to address. And I hope, at least by the time I have said what I have to say, that you will agree with me. Now, this title would have never occurred to me at the beginning of my career, over 50 years ago now. My psychology training had been, in my psychology training, I had been thoroughly indoctrinated into thinking that self-sufficiency, independence, was a skill that could be taught, and the sooner we begin that training for our children, the better. Now, fast forward to today, a half century later, this philosophy still dominates our attitudes towards raising children, whether we know it or not. It is so deeply embedded. In fact, it's almost like the air we breathe, so to speak. So I will begin by reviewing the doctrine of independence. I know you all know it well, but let me just review. The main tenet: independence should be the overarching objective in childhood, including adolescence, as well as the aim in adulthood. And it follows that independence must be focused on directly, worked on directly. Learning theory, still the dominant approach today, is always direct. You figure out the behavior you want, and then you shape it, you reinforce it, you reward it. And it was never too early to start. As I said, we began as psychologists. I just shake my head when I think of it now. We actually began by helping parents extinguish their babies' cries for help, as well as, of course, the whinings of the toddler and any other dependency that we thought was inappropriate or unsuitable. Is it any wonder that so many of us today feel ashamed by our own neediness and have difficulty asking for assistance? Now, helping dependence any more than necessary will result in children who will be spoiled or entitled, demanding, and stuck. Actually, the favorite word was demanding here, but also stuck in dependence. Warnings were routinely given by the experts that if dependence was given an inch, it would certainly take a mile. So we needed to nip it in the bud. In fact, the mantra for many parents and teachers became, you must never do anything for a child that they could or should do for themselves. This may echo or create an echo in your mind. Certainly, armies of adolescent counselors were trained to help teens wean themselves from their parents. Marriage counselors focused on disentangling parents from each other. Words were invented to throw dependence under the bus: codependence, fusion, enmeshment. The beautiful word enabling was turned on its head to mean fostering dependence, which is now a bad thing. And for centuries now, dependence has been vilified, discounted, feared, and the last generations have brought this actually to a whole new level. And independence is considered a life skill by learning theory. It's at the heart of the doctrine of independence. And it can be trained by using the principles of reinforcement. In other words, by using the power of praise, approval, affection, and friendly connection to reinforce acts of self-sufficiency. Now, love and approval were used as the primary tools for sculpting. I'm talking about this in the past tense, but this continues to be the dominant approach today. In fact, we have added new territories to self-sufficiency training: self-soothing, putting oneself to sleep, self-regulation, and the new rage in mental health for children, for children now, self-care. Now, many of us actually were raised by adults who were more or less under the influence of the doctrine of independence. Actually, I'd love to see a show of hands of those who identify with that. The core belief, something that was rarely talked about, except in philosophy of science courses, rarely talked about, but at the foundation of all of this, we must not assume or depend upon the existence of a natural instinct for independence that will spontaneously engage when developmentally ready or when conditions are conducive. Now, this is actually, if we look at this, this is actually a core non-belief. And secondly, this non-belief was not in keeping with natural science, which was all about discovering the true nature of nature and how it could be counted on. In fact, how wondrous it was. Now, as I became more exposed to natural and developmental science, I understood how out of order this premise was and is, how out of step with all that science was and is uncovering about the wisdom and the work of nature. Now, there were some other problems with this. If we take a closer look at this, it's easy to see. Really, does one foster independence by making it unsafe to depend? That's what it's suggesting, is that we make it unsafe to depend. We use these almost universal dependencies, which we now understand are our relational needs, our togetherness needs, our attachment needs. And so we actually make it just, we foster independence by making it unsafe? Or aren't these core attachment needs, as I just described, that are being messed with here? Isn't this a recipe for insecurity, which is known to sabotage becoming one's own person, the ultimate of independence, viability as a separate being? Have we taken a dreadful wrong turn in society? Have we been barking up the wrong tree? Has throwing dependence under the bus been our undoing? Has our doubt in the wisdom and work of nature backfired, giving us some of the most insecure and troubled children ever? So how does nature work? What is nature's plan for resolving dependence? What is nature's purpose for dependence? Now, when developmentalists look for clues about how nature works, it always likes to start at the beginnings, in both life and in life forms, you might say. That is, at the start of this. Now, the plant remains for developmentalists, especially gardeners like me, one of the most wondrous revelations of how nature works. And I come to it here. Nature's template for the unspontaneous unfolding of potential, using the plant as a diagram. The first and most obvious, of course, is the fruit, which in this case includes viability as a separate being, being able to walk on one's own 2 feet, becoming one's own person, emotional independence. The fruit will come in its season. As potential continues to unfold, given the conditions are conducive and attachment roots hold. Now, what is the equivalent for humans? And we'll look at this. But since everyone possesses the potential for more separate functioning, the realization of this potential is the ultimate yearning of nature itself. Maybe it's because of the fruit is out of view of this frame at least. It's in another season. We feel we must do something to hurry things along. I actually have never found such hurried ways helpful as a gardener. I was guilty of them as a young gardener, aiming for fruit for flowers way too soon in the season, and suffering. My plants suffered for my hurriedness. We must always remember that the fruit that is the wonder of nature's making cannot be imitated. It remains artificial, whether it's flowers, whether it's apples and peaches, impressive, but not life-giving in any shape or form. So yes, acting is if one is dependent, that is the act of independence, reinforcing it, does not actually make one any less dependent if we can understand that there's true fruit and artificial fruit. It only deprives one of the benefits that derive from depending. Now, secondly here, dependence, especially regarding attachment, is not so much a stage. It's a state of being. It's an inescapable reality of life. That is, the attachments must hold for the life of the plant. The minute there is disruption, the attachments do not hold. There is no unfolding of potential. And so what we understand from this is that independence is rooted in dependence, in satisfied dependence. That's where its root is. That's the irony. You can't get to independence without going through dependence. And some dependencies, as we'll talk about, are forever. And of course, pushing for independence at the expense of attachment is tantamount to trying to pull a plant up to make it grow faster, which would, of course, risk disrupting the roots. That's ridiculous if we think of a plant. We mustn't do this. We mustn't be in a hurry. We mustn't pull and push at independence. That only serves to disrupt the roots of attachment here. And pushing, the buds of independence are first manifest in desire and intent. The spirit of independence is a sign that all is well, is unfolding as it should. I'm thinking right now of my 6-month-old, 7th grandchild, Odessa, full of the spirit of independence already at 6 months of age, wanting to get her spoon into her own mouth. And oh my goodness, she vibrates with that energy. She's actually doing really well. But if you look closer, where does that spirit of independence come from? Well, her mom's in sight. It's just been after a time of cuddling and holding. We're all sitting at the table, getting our own spoons into our own mouth. In this context, the spirit of independence is alive and well. But why? Because there is satisfied dependence. I think of another grandchild, an incredible independent learner, always filled with curiosity, which is the mark of an independent learner, because curiosity brings you into his world. But again, I'll look at what surrounds him, and it is a wonderful experience of satisfied dependence. And then I think of all the times I've been asked, well, how do you get a child to dress themselves? How do you get a child, to do this, to do that? And I say, well, does the child want to dress themselves? That is far more important. Is there the spirit of independence? The buds of independence are first manifest in desire and intent. And if they're not there, then we must retreat. There's something else that we need to look. I can't think of a better indicator of well-being in a child than the spirit of independence. Not the acts of independence, which actually can come from an unhealthy place, but the spirit of independence. Now, what is the bottom line here? The bottom line is we need to take care of the attachment. Now, the plant is attaching to Mother Earth. And it's the relationship of the plant to Mother Earth that the story is about. It's what we don't see that the story is about, and that's a parallel in terms of humans. It's what we don't see, and this is the attachment. If you're looking at Odessa, you'll miss all the clues of how dependencies are being satisfied. If you look at Michael as an example of almost effervescent curiosity of independence learning, you'll miss all the clues about satisfied dependence, and so we do. And so what's the equivalent here? For humans, for plants, they attach to Mother Earth. But in terms of humans, we attach to each other. So what do these attachments look like? What do they look like? How do we fit together? What does it look like? Now, I've used puzzle pieces here. I think it's so funny that puzzle pieces have so-called innies and outies that direct and fit and secure the attachment. But is there some kind of equivalent in humans? Is there some kind of template for the giving and receiving? We look first of all at the beginning of things like the cell, at the giving and receiving of signals, and of course the neuron. Yes, there is a structure, there is a direction, from dendrites to axon to another's dendrite to axon. There is a structure to the delivery of signals. Is there an equivalent to the delivery of care? Is there something that we can see in these early kind of symbols of care, of attachment here, and how care is delivered? I believe there is. And after years of putting all these pieces together, the answer to this is, well, words fail us. We don't have it. We simply don't have a language of this. And so I've used the words dependence and alpha. That attachment comes together in an alpha, in the giving end of it, for giving, and the dependent for receiving. And I'm just going to review this here. After years of puzzling, I am absolutely convinced that the structure of attachment was on purpose. Attachments are specifically structured for the giving and receiving of care. There couldn't be anything more important. Nothing more important. Now, when we usually think of attachment, we've used the word social, which suggests equal. And we somehow think that we come together and we become attached together. Well, actually, the closer you look, the more you see there are no attachment valences there. That's not the way it works. The way it works is that if it's going to happen, it has to be skewed in the vertical dimension. Here I have it here as just the gentle skew, but it still has to be skewed. The vectors of attachment actually lie in the hierarchical plane, the vertical plane, not the horizontal plane. The construct of social has hidden this completely. This is where the attachment occurs. Now, I'm a woodworker as well as a gardener. I love joints. I love attaching wood to each other. This has always been a hobby of mine, attaching wood to each other. And so I'm going to add here these interlocking joints. You'll recognize it as a dovetail joint if you're a gardener. But see, this is where the bonding occurs. And why? Setting the stage for the most important thing of all, the delivery of care. We are meant to fit together in the delivery of care. If we strip away everything else, we see the seeking of care, the invitation to exist in one's presence for contact and connection, sameness, belonging, safety, and comfort, to get one's bearings, warmth and love, recognition, significance, understanding, a relational home. These are all our hungers for togetherness. These are our relational needs. These are our constant dependencies, like the plant's attachments. They don't go away. This is part of our being, our reality, and we're looking for our answer. Not for the answers when it comes to care. We're looking for the answer. Parents often think they have to have the answers. They have to know what to do. No. Children are seeking for their answer. And so if we come in the alpha caring mode, if we bring the lead with this, we have a take. Now, this is true whether we have kindergarten children, even if we sit them around round tables. The only attachments that are taking place is when it's dependent and alpha. It's true with student-teacher relationships. It's even true with twins. In twins, they'll alternate, or one will create an alpha personality and the other a seeking personality. This is huge. This is how the primary purpose of attachment here is to deliver this care. Whether it is in whatever venue, even in terms of couples, because that is an attachment, the purpose of which is to deliver care. So when stripped away to its essence, attachments, as I'm saying, are structured to deliver care. That doesn't mean they do, but it does make sense of their purpose. In other words, we're meant to fit into arrangements of cascading care. Cascading care. Every single human child, student is meant to fit together in a hierarchical attachment arrangements of a cascading care? This should be our first question as a teacher, as a student, as a parent, as a grandparent, is how to get the human care delivery system structured and arranged. It's a natural arrangement in harmony with the dynamics of attachment and the principles of development. It absolutely is natural. It's what nature wants to do. And if there is any wisdom, evolved wisdom in culture, it would be to create and preserve these kinds of attachments, making sure the seekers are attached to the providers. To lose such a culture is to lose its wisdom. And this is opposed to all the contrived arrangements based on social roles, gender stereotypes, prevailing assumptions of equality, particular dynamics between parents and children. It confronts child-led parenting. It confronts child-led teaching. This should be the leading between partners or couples or in friendship. In other words, our objective should be to embed in cascading care, as opposed to pushing for independence or promoting self-care. Now, who do our children depend upon to take care of their needs for togetherness? Are the ones they are depending upon the adults who are responsible for caring for them and about them? If not, we have a non-viable attachment because it is meant for the delivery of care. It should be our dominant focus in parenting and marriage and family and in society at large. Nature will do the work of developing potential, but nature needs us to first hook us up to each other so that caring results. If we look at all the rage today in child mental health, tips for kids, it's all about self-care. I don't have time to read all these things to you. I hope you can just take an image of this in some way to understand this. But when you look at this, and you'll be able to find this all over the internet, you won't find any mention of adult attachment, matchmaking to adults that care. In fact, they direct them to their peers for a sense of belonging. In other words, you're on your own. And the earlier you start to take care of yourself, the better off you will be. We couldn't be more misdirected in terms of emotional health and well-being. And yet this is a campaign to focus in schools, mental health programs for children, children's helplines, and so on. How could we have gotten so far off track of how nature works and how care is delivered? The primordial dance of attachment is how we're meant to connect. The first dance, the foremost dance, the very old dance of lead and follow. It is a dance of the ages. It's meant to be instinctive. There is a lead and follow in cascading care where responsibility and neediness dictate. And when we are in our mutual relationships like marriage and friendship, then there's a special version of this, taking turns taking care, where equality, mutuality, and reciprocity are in order. I visualize it this way. I meant them to take turns, but I couldn't quite figure out how to do that. So what is the wisdom of dependence then, to review? What is it? The essence of it? Wisdom of dependence is that it enables nature, our caretaker. It enables nature to take care of us through setting us up to take care of each other. Dependence is no accident. It is not a shortcoming on nature's part. Dependence is not a flaw in human existence. Getting us to depend upon each other is on purpose, just as emotion is on purpose. The stress response is on purpose. Shyness is on purpose. Dependence is on purpose. It enables nature to bind us together as dependence attracts and engages alpha and vice versa, thus creating the attachment through which care can be delivered. It enables nature to get on with the work of realizing potential, including the potential for independent functioning physically, emotionally, and as one's person, given sufficient care is received. And it enables nature to take care of the alpha providers as well. No, nature hasn't abandoned us. The alpha providers, it stretches them immensely to be able to take care of their dependents, then profoundly, and fulfills them profoundly when depended upon and when serving as another's answer. It is the answer. The unrecognized tragedy of our time is that our dependents are not depending upon us. This is thwarting getting our care through and thwarting nature itself. And could this be the very root of the escalating problems our children are experiencing? For example, increasing numbers of alpha children resist dependence, but they're backed into dependence for reasons that it's unsafe to depend. Now, these alpha children appear to us as strong and independent, in an illusion of dependence, of independence, and so we miss it. We miss it. The same with pure-oriented children. Their dependence is transferred to each other. So they're less dependent upon us. We don't get it. They're in trouble. Those who are defended against depending seem fiercely independent, camouflaging the essential truth about them and the only way to reach them. And the escalating numbers of shy children in our educational and care systems become highly distressed when having to depend upon strangers that they are not attended to. It shifts the focus to stress when the real thing is, no, where are the people they are meant to depend upon? The attachment is missing. And the official policy of governments has now become, all over Europe and in North America, has become to take on the role as a state, the defamiliization of care. It's role-based care, not relationship-based care, not attachment-based care, meaning that there's no natural system to get the care through. So the corresponding challenge of our times is to get our dependents to depend upon us. That is what we need to do. Bringing it back here, inspire dependence by taking a strong, caring alpha lead. Invite dependence and be worthy of that trust. Make it safe to depend, never using their relational needs against them. If anything is sacred, these are sacred. Be generous with one's care, providing more care than is pursued. And don't be fooled by the myriad illusions of independence. This isn't true. This isn't true independence. I think it all comes down to the bottom line. Where did we go wrong in the doctrine of independence? We weren't leaning on nature. We weren't seeing nature as benevolent. We were not in awe of nature in its ways. The more ready and willing we are to depend upon nature, its wisdom and its work, the more prepared we will be to generously and graciously invite the dependence of those we care for and care about. Comes full circle. Rather than a non-belief in nature's wisdom and work, this is founded in a deep belief in nature's wisdom and work. Well, hopefully this will inspire some awe about how nature truly works. The design is brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Hopefully also it will fill you with a sense of being well taken care of, not abandoned nor neglected. And as a result, embolden your trust that you can lean into this wisdom, count on its work. Of course, there's more, much more that could be said about this. In fact, I had to trim about 75% of the presentation that I had prepared just to fit, which I didn't actually fit, into the time that was allotted. I hope I can figure out a way of sharing all the other thoughts that pertain to this subject as well. Thank you.